Hello everyone and welcome to this live workshop. I'm, as always, your flexibility guy, Coach Elia. And today we'll be talking about hip flexibility. A lot of people ask me, how can I get into anterior pelvic tilt, so this position here, because I'm stuck into posterior. I can't move my hips correctly. How can I do it? Now, in this workshop, I want to teach you how to do it. And we'll be talking about mainly two things, proprioception and flexibility. This is how you can get a nice anterior pelvic tilt, nice and flexible hips to get into stretches, to move better, of course, and also to do stretches like pancakes or also pike stretches, middle splits in general. But this is something that can help you move better in general, okay? So this is why people ask me, I want to move my hips freely, okay? So in this workshop, we're gonna see how to do it. So get ready to start, let's go. First things first, we gotta talk about two things, okay? In order to unlock our hips here, so to move our hips correctly, we gotta increase our flexibility. This comes first. And understand how to move our hips correctly. This is called proprioception, which is our ability to move our body, to sense our body in a certain way. Okay, so when we want to move our hips, what does it mean to even move our hips? Because some people just don't understand this kind of distinction between posterior and anterior pelvic tilt. This distinction, this kind of feeling we want to develop, this is called proprioception. Flexibility is not enough, but proprioception comes only after flexibility. Why? Because we can't move a joint if that joint is not flexible enough to move, which is the problem, the main problem people must face. Why? Because we're growing so stiff. Our daily postures are much like this one, okay? A seated position where our hips are constantly, not in anterior pelvic tilt, but we're sitting on our glutes and we are closing our hip joint into posterior pelvic tilt. Now, posterior pelvic tilt is a position that shortens our muscles. It shortens our hamstrings, it shortens our glutes, it shortens our adductors, okay? By spending tons of hours a day for years in this position here, our muscles get so tense. And not only tense, they get used to this position here. This is the problem, okay? So we got two problems. They are stiff and they're also used to this position here, which prevents us from getting into anterior pelvic tilt correctly. This is why most people feel they can't get into anterior pelvic tilt. Their hips are stuck over here. It may be the seated position, but also, if we don't stretch, the less we stretch, the stiffer we grow, okay? If we don't pay attention to flexibility training in a broad sense, just not just like, you know, like splits and stuff, just flexibility training, range of motion training, preserving our ideal range of motion. If we don't pay attention to that, then in the long run, of course, we're gonna grow stiffer, okay? So we won't have this ability, this kind of range of motion to get into anterior pelvic tilt correctly. Okay, so these are the main problems we could face. Now, why am I talking about this flexibility thing? Because moving our hips into anterior pelvic tilt is mainly about flexibility. Now, flexibility of which muscles? Of which muscles am I even talking about? Now, there are many muscles surrounding the hip joint, okay? And when we want to build movement freedom, so when we want to build this kind of ability here, we're involving almost every muscle of the hip joint. But three muscles three muscles are fundamental, are essential here. Okay, these three muscles are already mentioned. I already mentioned these muscles, but let me repeat for you. Okay, so when we want to move into anterior pelvic tilt, here we stretch three big muscles. Now, I'm talking about our hamstrings, the muscles here, posteriorly to our legs, okay, the hamstrings. These are actually three groups of muscles: the bicep femoris, the semimembranosus, and the semitendinosus. Hamstrings, okay? Second, our glutes. Our glutes are muscles that cover many functions. One of them is posterior pelvic tilt. The stiffer they are, especially the big glute, the stiffer it is, the more it moves our hips into posterior pelvic tilt, okay? So we shorten our glutes. When you think about it, when you want to posterior pelvic tilt, you squeeze your glutes, right? So when you squeeze your glutes, you move your hips into posterior pelvic tilt. That means that when they contract, your hips move into posterior and not anterior, okay? So we do want to increase the flexibility of our glutes and our adductors, okay? So the muscles here inside of our legs. Again, this is a group of muscles, adductor brevis, longus, and adductor major. And then we have also the gracilis and the pectineus, okay? These are five muscles, actually, okay, which form the adductor muscles. We want to stretch this musculature in order to better move our hips into anterior pelvic tilt, okay? So now, in this workshop, we're gonna first understand which kind of exercises we can use to stretch this musculature with the specific idea. So we have, of course, there are many stretches we can do. Since we know we want to stretch our hamstrings, we want to stretch our adductors, we want to stretch our glutes, imagine how many exercises we could do. But now in this workshop, we just want to select the best exercises, okay? With this idea in mind, that we want to move our hips better, okay? This is the main idea. Fantastic. With this idea in mind, then, we want to first stretch, but then something even more important than stretching comes, which is what I was talking to you about, this proprioception idea. Now, the proprioception means that once we have the flexibility to move correctly into our position, then we want to use that flexibility to get into the desired position. Make sense? So we want to use the flexibility we're going to build to understand how to move our hips correctly. Make sense, guys? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So flexibility comes first, then proprioception. We mix them together, and what you're going to get is probably, I hope, at the end of this workshop, a nice and flexible hip joint that can move into anterior pelvic tilt. Make sense? So please do follow these exercises with me. First exercise we can use to unlock our anterior pelvic tilt, okay? All you need is a couple of boxes or a bench, a couple of chairs, something like this, okay? Where you can comfortably rest with your hips and with one foot, okay? If it's a bench, a chair, it doesn't matter. Now, if you have an elastic band, we're gonna use this. And what I really do care about here is our hip posture. Our hip posture is so important. It's so important, okay? Because remember here, now, we're gonna be stretching our muscles, but something that is crucial is to emphasize this anterior pelvic tilt at all times. So in all the stretches we're gonna do, since our purpose here is to anterior pelvic tilt, so to increase this kind of range of motion, right? So we do want to increase our anterior pelvic tilt. Our purpose is to unlock this movement here. Throughout all the exercises that I've selected for you today, I want you to feel that activation, okay? That's why I selected these exercises here, because they allow us to get into that anterior pelvic tilt, to understand, to feel if we're getting into the right activation, right position. Make sense? Fantastic. So you have a band here, and you just sit on in between a couple of chairs, a bench, whatever. All right? First, one leg in front of you. Initially, bent, just like this. Okay? Now, as much as you can, this depends on our flexibility level. Okay? But as much as you can, when you sit down, try to understand how to sit down correctly. Okay? So this means that rather than curving our back, our intention is what matters. I don't care if you can actually do it. Okay? But try to do it as much as you can. That is going to bring your hamstrings, your adductors, and your glutes into deepen up initial stretch. At least initial, because you want to unlock those hips into anterior pelvic tilt, right? So try to, even before we get into the stretch, we do want to try to get into anterior pelvic tilt. Make sense? Now, why the band? Because this is going to help us understand how to do it. Now, we want to wrap the band around our hips like this, okay? And then we want to wrap it around our foot as well. Now, the tension here really depends on how much you want to feel it, okay? If you want to feel it just lightly, you can make it very loose, okay? If you want to feel it more, you can double pass it, okay? So, for example, here, I go like this, and then I wrap my foot, as you can see, like this, okay? Hop. And now it's gonna pull strongly onto my lower back, okay? This depends on you. If initially, like the stretch is effective, also even without the band. So this just wanna help us understand how to do it correctly, okay? So I'm just gonna use it here lightly, just to explain to you how it works. Now, as you can see, the band is pulling my lower back, so I do want to follow the traction of the band to understand how to move my hips into anterior pelvic tilt. This is the purpose of this exercise here, okay? Now, initially, in this hamstring stretch, I do want to maintain my leg bent like this, okay? Sit down properly. Why am I bending the leg? Because this is taking the stretch out the posterior part of my knee. Now, our hamstrings are big muscles that connect two joints, okay? One is the hip and one is the knee. The hamstrings go both under the knee and under the hip and under the knee, okay? They cross two joints, the hip and the knee. Now, when the hamstrings are really stiff, we may feel our stretches more under the knee, which prevents us from feeling the stretch under the hip. And now comes the important part. Since what we want to unlock is not our knees, but our hips, what we do care about, hamstrings-wise, is to unlock their portion closer to the hip. Is that right? So not to the knee, to the hip. Even though the muscles are long and they cross the knee as well. Sure. But what we do care about is this portion here, below the hip joint. Okay, guys? So we do want to focus here, at the hip level. And this strategy here, just bending the knee, allows us to do just that. To focus on our hip rather than just the knee. Okay? Because the moment we extend the knee, then the hamstrings are gonna pull also here. And most often than not, people just feel the stretch here under the knee, and they can't feel it properly under the hip, which in the long run, and also when we stretch, may be a problem, because if what we're trying to do is to unlock our hips, then like losing the tension over there may be a problem. Make sense? That's why we do want to bend our knee initially. Now we follow the traction of the bend. Make sense? So we follow the traction of the bend. We open our hips, okay, as much as we can. Anterior pelvic tilt. Now the strategy goes like this. First, we touch the knee with our chest, okay? And then, leaving the knee in contact with the chest at all times, we never want to lose this contact. Then we extend our leg gradually without leaving the contact. Now, to get into the stretch initially, we maintain our leg bent, okay? And we move our hips into anterior pelvic tilt as much as possible. We may want to follow the traction of the bend, and we want to press our head forward and our hips back. So think about these two opposite directions. The head goes forward, the hip goes backward. Again, the head goes forward, the hip goes backward, okay? So this lengthens our spine and our hip, which moves into anterior pelvic tilt and pulls onto the hamstrings more. Of course, increasing our flexibility. And we can stay here. So first strategy, we want to gradually extend our knee, maintaining our chest in contact with it. And a protocol we can use, we can spend here 5 to 10 breaths, gradually trying to get deeper into the stretch, okay? Second strategy we can use, okay, so this is the bent leg variation. Second strategy, we can use a dynamic variation to stretch our hamstrings, which now, the bent leg variation just involves mainly the part of our hamstrings close to our hip. Okay, here, you gotta feel it under your hip. And this is gonna help you increase your hip motion specifically, because we're not gonna involve our knee, since it's bent, but our hip more, okay, which enhances this kind of postural activation in anterior pelvic tilt. This is so useful, and also pressing our head forward and our hips back really helps to unlock our hip range of motion. Make sense? Now, but in the second variation, we do want to extend the knee and bend it gradually and dynamically. Now, we don't care about the chest being in contact with the knee anymore in this dynamic variation, okay? We just want to press our body down as much as possible, striving to maintain our hips into anterior pelvic tilt as much as possible. We can follow the traction of the bend to do it better, and our back straight as much as possible, and we bend and extend dynamically, okay? So we want to do this kind of work here, and as we bend, we may feel it more under our hip. As we extend, we may feel it more under our knee instead. This is the whole hamstring stretch. This is how it gotta be felt, okay? So a protocol we can use, we can repeat this kind of work, nice and controlled, stopping in each position, so with the leg straight and with the leg bent, for a couple of seconds per rep, okay? So bend, extend, 5 to 10 reps, okay? Pausing in each position for at least a couple of seconds. I love this because this teaches us the difference between the bent leg and the straight leg variation, and also the dynamic stretch allows us to get briefly into this very deep stretch with our leg straight without remaining there too much, because this is undoubtedly more intense than the other. You may ask why, when we extend the knee, this is more intense. Because it involves also another part of the hamstrings, which is no more just the portion closer to the hip, which is involved when we bend it, but the portion also closer to our knee. So it's a more complete stretch in a sense, because like it stretches the muscle even more. from multiple joints, okay, so it's more intense. Initially, we do want to approach this position with the leg straight, dynamically, okay, 5 to 10 reps. And then finally, we want to maintain our leg straight. Since our leg is straight, we may feel it more under our knee, that's normal, okay? Now, when this comes in, it's even more important that we focus on that that anterior pelvic tilt, okay? That nice and strong anterior pelvic tilt sensation. We may have the band to help us, okay? So wrap the band around your lower back and your foot and allow your leg to be completely straight. We don't care about our chest being in contact with our knee anymore. That's not the purpose now. We just want to find a straight leg stretch here. The most important part here is that you emphasize this anterior pelvic tilt that in the long run, of course, will unlock your hip rotation. One way you can think about it, like one piece of advice I can give you is this. When you sit down, feel that you're not sitting on your glutes, okay? Feel instead that you're sitting on your hip bones, okay? It's a different kind of seated position. So initially, you may want to, as you get into this variation, get correctly with your hips in anterior pelvic tilt. At least, this is something you want to aim for. Guys, especially if you got stiff hamstrings, there's no way you're gonna move your hips into anterior pelvic tilt here as much because you need more flexibility. You gotta wait for that. It's your intention though that matters. If your intention is to move this way, then that's all that matters. Think about it, okay? This is all I'm asking for here. All we're asking from our body for, okay? So, a lot of people ask me, should I point or should I flex my toe as I get into this hamstring stretch? Now, the difference is that when we point the toe, we decrease the nerve tension on our sciatic nerve. It's a really famous nerve. And we decrease that tension because the sciatic nerve, by doing this, gets shortened by pointing the toe. Whereas when we flex our toe like this, we increase the sciatic nerve tension, and we also stretch another muscle which runs here behind our knee, which is called the gastrocnemius, which is part of the calves muscles. And this intensifies the stretch, okay? So it all depends on what we want to do. If we want to simplify the stretch at the nerve level and at the calves level, so we just want to focus on our hamstrings, and maybe we want to work on our toe point, which may be a component we may want to work on, then we should point our toe. Vice versa. If we want to intensify the stretch, we can flex the toe, and this increases our nerve tension. So we're gonna stretch our nerve as well, which in the long run may be helpful to increase its tolerance to stretches as long as it's not painful, okay? And we're gonna stretch our gastrocnemius as well, okay? 2 birds with 1 stone. Up to you, okay? I usually what I suggest people do here is flex the toe, okay? Like this. Is a more complete stretch overall, as long as it's not painful. Again, this must be comfortable, at least nerve-wise. You don't want to feel any pain inside of the nerves, and you don't want to feel any electric sensation, okay? Just the stretch is okay, of course. Expect the stretch to be there. It's more intense, so even harder than the standard variation, but not too intense. By the way, guys, just to finish this exercise here, leg straight. Now we want to move into our anterior pelvic tilt, and from here, maintaining our leg as straight as possible. We don't care about our chest to the knee. Obviously, we want to bring our trunk down, okay? Again, this posture Anterior pelvic tilt, head forward, hips back. Head forward, I press my head forward and my hips back. The mistake most people do here is this. They just want to go down. I can go down like these guys. But guess what? Here, I don't feel any particular stretch. I stay here, but I move correctly, so I shift my hips into anterior pelvic tilt. I move my hips back. I press my head forward. I keep my back as straight as possible. Guess what? I feel an intense sensation of stretch in my hamstrings. Why? I'm higher than before because I'm rotating my hips correctly. I'm straightening my lower back as much as possible. And this is what creates the stretch hamstrings-wise. The hamstrings are not just muscles that move our hip like this into flexion, but they also strongly influence our hip rotation. So into anterior pelvic tilt, our hip tilt. And when we stretch our hamstrings using anterior pelvic tilt, that's the best way we can stretch them. And that's why also many people struggle with this, because it's a tough movement to unlock, okay? So, legs straight, we reach for our calves, for our ankles, for our toes, and gradually pull. I don't care. Just reach for something and pull. If you're doing it on a bench or a box or a chair, you surely have something to grab and to pull, which, as you can see, intensifies the stretch. It's an awesome strategy, guys. It's an awesome strategy. So now we want to pull with our hands, pull with our arms to create the stretch. It's not enough just to wait here. I know it may be intense. You may feel, this is intense. No, not enough. Pull with your arms. Create the stretch by pulling yourself forward. This is also what helps you get into that anterior pelvic tilt we're aiming for. Okay, guys? So, anterior pelvic tilt and move your head forward and your hips back. All right, guys? Now we stay here, and a protocol we can use, we can spend here 10 to 20 breaths. And after 10 to 20 breaths, we can apply even a PNF contraction, which is a strategy to relax our hamstrings muscles further. Okay, we want to press our heel down here. We want to make a strong pressure down, create this strong pressure down. We want to press onto our box, onto our chair, bench, whatever, okay? Hold that contraction for 10 to 20 seconds, then stop, inhale. As we inhale, exhale, pull more, and with that kind of getting deeper into the stretch, we do also want to anterior pelvic tilt correctly. Again, the technique always stays the same, okay? So head forward, hips back, straighten our back. That's what we're aiming for. Okay, guys? So another 10 to 20 breaths here, and we can stop it. Again, this band is useful. Why is the band useful? Because we do want to follow its traction. The more we make it pull, the more we're gonna follow its traction, okay? It can be done also without the band, but look at this. With the band, can you see the band is pulling my lower back exactly how I wanna move it into anterior pelvic tilt. So follow the traction of the band as you stay in this stretch here, and also feel that you're focusing on this anterior pelvic tilt by sitting down on your hip bones, not just on your glutes like this. Okay, guys? And of course, I like this exercise here very much because we can repeat the same kind of work on the other side. Remember, guys, that our legs in general, we have muscles that run on one leg and on the other. We don't have any muscles connecting the legs. Yeah. It's strange. Even when I learned it, I was like, what? We don't have any muscles connecting our legs? surprisingly, no, we don't have any. So imbalances may be quite common, okay? We may have one leg which is stiffer than the other. And so this is why I strongly suggest you use single leg stretches whenever possible and useful, okay? And this one is one of them. Again, on the other side, as you can see now, you can see also how I'm placing my the other leg, which is bent, and both of my hips are resting on the support here, okay? Both of my hips at all times. Now I want to anterior pelvic tilt. I want to do my best to get into this nice anterior pelvic tilt, and as you can see, first I grab something, bent leg variation, chest to the knee. Bent leg variation means chest to the knee always. I never want to lose this contact, okay? So I stay here and gradually get deeper, deeper, and deeper, okay? 10 to 20 breaths. Then I can do the dynamic variation where I bend and extend, pulling myself as deep as possible throughout the movements, 5 to 10 reps. And on the last one, I can stay here, leg straight again, 10 to 20 breaths, a PNF contraction where I push my foot down towards the floor for 10 to 20 seconds, then I stop, inhale, exhale, and I spend here the last 10 to 20 breaths, trying to increase the stretch as much as possible. Again, it is really important, head forward, hips back, head forward, hips back, okay? This kind of balance here, makes sense? And this was our hamstring stretch. Guys, I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorite ones. Also because by sitting down, there are many hamstring stretches, guys. Standing hamstring stretches, many of them. But why did I choose this one? Because here, guys, you have this feeling. You're sitting down on something. And you have this feeling of sitting down on something, which gives you a feedback. Are you moving your hips correctly into anterior pelvic tilt? This is what this exercise is asking you the whole time. Because you're sitting on something, so you can have this feedback, you can have this sensation as you sit down at the hip level, which tells you, okay, you're sitting down correctly. You are in anterior pelvic tilt. Oh no, you are in posterior pelvic tilt. So you can choose, you can adjust it. This is why this is so useful. And I like it so much. Right? Wonderful. Now, let's move on. Second exercise. Okay, second exercise for our adductors. We have this second exercise for our adductors. Now, we're talking about our adductors after our hamstrings. Many people don't think about the adductors being involved in this movement of anterior pelvic tilt, but they are actually not as important as the hamstrings, because the hamstrings are really the most important muscles that may influence our anterior pelvic tilt, okay, these muscles here. But also the muscles we have here inside of our legs, the adductors, they really do move our hips into posterior pelvic tilt when they shorten. So we must lengthen our adductors if we want to fully move our hips. And this is what most people miss as well, because a lot of people think, okay, I gotta stretch my hamstrings to unlock my anterior pelvic tilt, which is true, but it's not only about that. We also have the adductors. Okay, we also have these muscles here. Now I'm gonna show you two exercises you can use, like using the same setup, to work on your adductor muscles. Okay, now you just need a wall and some weights. I'm gonna use my gymnastic bars here, but it's the same. I'm gonna just use these as a wall. Okay, you wanna lie down on your back and have some weights and have a yoga block maybe just for extra comfort. One weight on one side, one weight on the other side. Now, some people ask me, does it work the same even without the weights? The answer is no, it doesn't work without the weights. Okay, so you need the weights. At least 5 kg per side, perhaps 4 or 5 kgs per side is the bare minimum. It gotta be, your adductors are pretty strong, okay? So you need something to push them down, to open them wide, okay? So 2 weights, 1 on each side. Now we want to rest on our back and we want to lie down here, okay? Since what we're trying to do, guys, is unlocking our anterior pelvic tilt, I want you to start in anterior pelvic tilt, okay? So move your hips into anterior pelvic tilt as much as you can. Now, place your feet against the wall. Now, again, I'm using my gymnastic bars, but it's the same. What I want you to check out here, guys, is that I'm placing my feet on the same line as my knees, okay? They are on the same line, on one line, okay? So not in, not like this. It's out. A projection of my knees, okay? Now I move my hips into anterior pelvic tilt. I place a yoga blocks under my head just to stay more comfortable here. And I take my weights, okay, here. I take my weights and I place them on top of my knees. This is going to be the craziest and most effective adductor stretch ever, okay? One of the best ones. So, hop, weights on the knees, and we slowly go down. Now, it works really easy at this point. We anterior pelvic tilt, so we want to emphasize that nice lower back curve, okay? So, stick your bum out, arch your lower back, and get into anterior pelvic tilt as much as possible. And now allow your knees to go down. Now, you don't want to stay with your feet higher or excessively lower than your knees. Always a projection. So if your knees go down, your feet must follow, okay? Your feet must follow what your knees do. Make sense? So we go down and we just stay here, okay? Relax here. And a protocol we can use to increase our adductors flexibility here, we want to spend 10 to 20 breaths, okay? Opening our legs as much as possible. After 10 to 20 breaths, we want to press our knees up. But at the same time, we want to make a resistance both with our hands and with the weights, which are obviously pushing our knees down, okay? So I press down with my hands as well. This is key here. I always want to press down with my hands as well. Okay, 10 to 20 seconds. I hold this isometric contraction up, pushing up with my knees. And when I stop it, I inhale. And on the exhale, I try to get deeper, opening through my lower back as much as possible again. And as I get deeper, I move my knees down and I follow with my feet. So always my feet, a projection of my knees. And the more I open, the better. Okay, guys? Now, as I said, I have 2 exercises. Now, the first one is this one, the frog stretch, which targets our adductors, okay, mainly our adductors here, the whole musculature, all these muscles inside of our legs, they're gonna all be targeted here. And this can be done by everyone. This is why I like this exercise so much. Everyone can get here, just use the weights, push down. And the second variation is exactly, works almost exactly the same, but this time you want to take your feet together, okay, like a puppy, okay, like this, a puppy pose. Now, here you want to place your feet against the wall, okay, and drive your hips as close as possible to your feet as you take them together. This is like, I call it a diamond pose exactly for this. I create much like a diamond with my hips, okay? And now this works exactly the same, but why is it different? Because by creating this diamond shape, we're gonna work more on something which is called hip external rotation, okay? This external rotation of the hip is so key even when we move our hips into anterior pelvic tilt. Inside of the hip, if we look inside of the hip, when we move our hips into anterior pelvic tilt, what happens is that the hip also moves into external rotation, which may be limited in some individuals. Here, we're just working on this, okay? More than the frog stretch, the previous variation. We also involve our adductors here and mostly work on our external rotation. So feet are together, guys. completely together, okay? Together, heels together, toes together. Now, it works the same because the strategy we want to use is exactly the same, okay? So, arch your back, work on that anterior pelvic tilt, place the weights on top of your knees, and allow your knees to go down. The lower, the better. Of course, we're using the weights, so no problem here. Wherever you can stop, you stop, okay? Just make sure you feel the stretch correctly. Push down with your hands and with the weights at the same time. Now we stay here, and the protocol we can use is exactly the same as the one before. So we stay here for 5 to 10 breaths, okay? Relaxing, arching our back, working that anterior pelvic tilt, opening through our hips. After 5 to 10 breaths, we press our knees up for 10 seconds. PNF contraction, and we oppose, like we make an opposing force with our hands and with our the weights obviously are gonna push down either way. And then we stop, inhale, and on the exhale, we increase the stretch, and we try to get deeper for another 10 to 20 breaths, allowing our hips to open as much as possible. This is insane. This is one of my favorite exercises for external rotation. And this was the diamond pose. So this is actually a combination, as I told you, 2 exercises for the adductors, both the frog stretch and the diamond pose. We want to use them in combination, okay, combined with the other ones to increase our hip flexibility. Now, after the adductors, so we have worked on the hamstrings and we worked on our adductors. As I told you, there is another very important muscle we want to stretch. This is our glutes, okay? So third exercise, we want to work on our glutes. These are very, we want to keep it as simple as possible, okay? There are many glute stretches, guys, we can do to work on this musculature. But one sequence I like, we just need a wall, okay? Initially, though, we're not going to use it. Why? Because look at this. What we want to do to stretch our glutes is to flex, in this case, flex our hip. So bring our leg towards our trunk. Externally rotate it, so move it out, as I told you, which is an essential component for glute stretches. And finally, get into that nice anterior pelvic tilt. Is that right? That's what we want to do, right? Perfect. Now, follow me now. We want to start lying down on the floor like this, okay? Wall in front of us. We go down. Initially, we want to place one foot on top of the other knee, okay? Like this. One foot on top of the other knee, okay? And now, we don't care about where the knee stays at this point. We just want to get as close to the wall as possible, okay? Get into our anterior pelvic tilt, and with the foot on the wall, we want to walk up, and at the same time, we want to anterior pelvic tilt as much as possible. So what I'm asking you to do here is a very specific lower back movement, which brings our hips into anterior pelvic tilt. So it entirely changes. If I just allow my back to be curved, I'm not going to feel any stretch. The moment I try to bring my hips into anterior pelvic tilt and to bring my foot, this is the stretched leg, the one I have on the side, towards my trunk, then I can feel the glute stretch, okay? Now, we want to stop wherever we feel the stretch in our glutes, okay? So in this case, I want to feel the stretch in this area here. Now, if we allow our knee, the knee of our stretched leg, to come too much towards our trunk, this is going to decrease external rotation. So it's a compensation, and we obviously are going to feel less stretch. But initially we want to make it just go here, because we want to focus just on anterior pelvic tilt. So arch our lower back. We want to arch our lower back as much as possible and pull our knee towards our chest. That's it. We don't care about the knee, okay? We pull the other knee towards our chest, okay? Now, take your time, initially against the wall, then if you can, go in front of your knee whenever you can and pull, okay? Nice. This is gonna be excellent for our glutes, okay? Now we pull, and a protocol we can use, we can stay here for 10 to 20 breaths, and after 10 to 20 breaths, we can apply a PNF contraction. Now, to apply a PNF contraction, which further relaxes our glutes muscles, we can press this foot, the foot of the leg we're stretching, against the other knee, okay? So we maintain that contraction for 10 to 20 seconds, and then we stop. Inhale, and on the exhale, we try to get deeper, okay? So we try to bring our leg further towards our foot, in this case, further towards our chest, okay? So we bring it more and more and more, and another 10 to 20 breaths here. Then we want to change the strategy, because at this point we also want to work on external rotation. So with one hand we want to press the other knee out until we got it as far from our chest as possible. And at this point, maintaining this concept always active, okay, we do want to bring our leg down again, okay, anterior pelvic tilt, and this is gonna focus more on external rotation. It's also always excellent for our glutes. Now, the most important part here is that we constantly maintain our hips into anterior pelvic tilt as much as possible as we pull our leg towards our chest. The closer we get to the wall, the more we can make pressure with that leg on the wall, okay? Now, if you allow your hips to go up this way, okay, you compensate a little bit for the stretch, okay? So, for example, if I do something like this, as you can see, I'm curving my back a lot, okay? Whereas if I maintain my hips on the floor, anterior pelvic tilt, this just puts me in a condition where I feel the stretch of my glutes. And at that point, if I maintain this technique, an anterior pelvic tilt, and I'm bringing my leg into flexion here, this stretches my glutes initially, okay? So this is just good. Maintaining my hips over there, I just emphasize this posture, and just a little movement is enough to feel it now at this point, maintaining the correct technique, okay? So this is how it changes at the glute level to maintain the correct posture and the wrong posture, okay? So now I pull, emphasizing this external rotation. I can repeat the same protocol. So I can stay here 10 to 20 breaths, then I apply a PNF contraction. I press my foot against my knee for 10 seconds, stay. Then I stop, inhale, and on the exhale, I pull more, okay, and I try to get deeper into it, pulling my knee towards my chest progressively more, okay. And I don't want to exaggerate here, obviously, I don't want to exaggerate, but the more I pull, the better. Nice one. Okay, and always maintain your hips on the floor. Use the wall just to pull more and more and more. Whenever you're ready, if the wall is not enough, just use your hands to pull further, especially in the first phase where we're not emphasizing these external rotations. So there is a first phase where this leg is free to move, to come all the way towards our chest, because what we're emphasizing is anterior pelvic tilt and hip flexion. Then we want to introduce hip external rotation as well. So this changes a little bit. It's going to be a little more intense because we introduce another variable. And of course, the stretch will be tougher to maintain at the same intensity. Make sense, guys? And of course, we want to swap legs. This is, again, one side stretch per time. And this allows us to work on one side and then on the other, so you're gonna understand if you have one side stiffer than the other and can work specifically on that side, okay? Because some people may have like one side stiffer than the other. If that's the case, don't worry, that's normal. Maybe spend a little more time on your stiffer side. Okay, guys? So this was the third exercise for our glutes. And now we covered every muscle that is involved in anterior pelvic tilt, our glutes, our hamstrings, and our adductors with the three most important, I'd say, with the three most important exercises that we can do for these muscles and for this musculature. It's time for us to talk about one last key detail when it comes to this concept of anterior pelvic tilt, which is hip proprioception. So, how to understand whether or not we're moving our hips correctly. So, let's talk about proprioception now. Now, proprioception means, as I told you, moving our hips correctly, okay? Now, this comes only after we have unlocked our flexibility. So the first part of this workshop is essential to understand this second part, because this second part implies that we have the flexibility to move in this kind of posture, to move out of our posterior pelvic tilt into our anterior pelvic tilt. Make sense, guys? So, this understanding is key. You want to be flexible before you can even understand proprioception. Why? I want to emphasize this concept. We can't move correctly if we don't have the flexibility to do so. This is a simple concept, but most people don't get it. Most people come to me and they ask me, how should I move? How can I unlock my hips? I can't understand how to do it. Dude, you're not just not understanding it. You're not flexible. I don't want to be disrespectful here. It's not about being disrespectful. It's about setting priorities. The understanding of a movement comes only after we are flexible enough. We create the right conditions within our bodies to understand that movement, okay? And so flexibility in this regard comes first. Thanks to the flexibility we have built, we can understand how to move our hips correctly, which is exactly what proprioception and moving our hips into anterior pelvic tilt is about. Okay, guys? Now, once we have this correct sensation, one exercise we can use is the pelvic roll and the good morning, okay? Now, the pelvic roll comes first. We want to sit down on something and roll legs far apart, okay? Not too wide, but a little wide, okay? Feet below our knees, a projection again. Hands on top of the support or in front of us, okay? We can use another chair, whatever, in front of us here, just to help ourselves. And here, we want to get from posterior pelvic tilt, so the incorrect position, we want to feel this pelvic roll. So we want to roll our pelvis into anterior pelvic tilt. We stick our bum out and we tilt our body forward, we arch our back. The sensation you want to feel at the glute level is really important. Now, as you are in posterior pelvic tilt, you gotta feel that you're sitting on your glutes, okay? Your glutes are touching the support here. Whereas, when you move into anterior pelvic tilt, you're using your hands to assist yourself. When you move into anterior pelvic tilt, you want to feel your glutes. Get out of that position, get out of the bench, get out of the support, whatever. And now you're sitting down, not on your glutes anymore. You're sitting down on your hip bones, okay? This is the anterior pelvic tilt we are building here. We want to be in. to stretch our hamstrings, adductors, and to be in the best condition possible to move freely. This freedom of movement translates into many different stretching positions, but it all starts here. This is hip freedom. Hip freedom, anterior pelvic tilt wise, means understanding how to get from here to here with enough flexibility to do so. This is hip anterior pelvic tilt freedom. Okay, guys? And this is a base, a strong base to move correctly, to move in the correct manner, to stretch our muscles, to move our hips freely. So at first, we do want to understand this feeling of posterior pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt, okay, freely. This kind of movement here. First with our hands on the bench, then with our hands just without any kind of assistance coming from our hands, and feel how the hips roll there. Then we can use an exercise to increase this proprioception, okay? To increase this kind of feeling, this kind of anterior pelvic tilt feeling, okay? And to enhance our understanding of the position, okay? And we want to introduce some load to maintain that posture under pressure, which is something really important to do if we want to build strong understanding and posture of what we're trying to build. And also, obviously, to stretch our muscles. Okay, so we just need a weight, and we want to place it behind our back. Okay, so same position here. We get into anterior pelvic tilt. A support in front of us. We can do it also on a bench. And this is the good morning, okay? The good morning. So we stay here, and we place the weight behind our back. Now, maintaining that kind of nice anterior pelvic tilt, what we want to do, we want to start here, maintain that anterior pelvic tilt, press our head forward, our hips back as much as possible, arch the back, get down, and come back up. This is going to build strength and flexibility, so mobility, which is strength plus flexibility, throughout our range of motion, allowing us to build the control of our anterior pelvic tilt posture and the strength to create it. We can repeat it for reps, so we can go down, remain here for a couple of seconds, and come back up for 5 to 10 reps. And on the last one, we can use that bottom position to stretch our muscles further. And here we want to move our head in front of us and our hips back, trying to straighten our back as much as possible. Oh, we can stay here for 5 to 10 breaths, and then we can come back up. As we are down, we want to relax there and gently get deeper and deeper. And that one, the bottom seated good morning position is an excellent stretch for our hamstrings, for our adductors, for all the muscles that limit hip anterior pelvic tilt here, okay? So we're not just using this exercise to build posture, to build strength, and to build flexibility, but also to build more understanding of how to move and control our muscles into anterior pelvic tilt. So much so that this is an exercise that everyone should use, in my opinion, of course, who struggles with anterior pelvic tilt, who struggles with this movement here, with hip range of motion, during their warm-up, okay? This is an excellent warm-up exercise, not just for our back, it's just for the entire lower body region. So if you're someone who's kind of a gym goer, like you're doing squats, lower body stuff, lower body training, but whatever you're doing, this exercise here just prepares the body, warms our structures, and also allows us to work on our control, flexibility, and strength. A fantastic one. Now, before I'm almost finished, but I should mention this. So this is the key. Okay, I just want to give you a bonus. Okay, once this exercise here feels okay, we are in the correct place. Okay, so proprioception ends here. Okay, this is the basic. Once we're here, we have flexible hips. We can control our anterior pelvic tilt. And we've just seen the exercises to get here. And then as we are, like these exercises here are not just exercises that we want to do in a specific day at a specific time. No, you want to sit down like this. You want to warm up like this. This is an everyday posture. When I work, I'm mindful and I want to maintain this posture. What the purpose of this workshop is not just to teach you the exercise that stretches, but also to connect with this posture. This posture is hip freedom. This posture is anterior pelvic tilt freedom. And once you unlock it, you want to hold it. You want to sit in it. Okay? This allows you to maintain your hips flexible. Okay? And to have them flexible whenever you need. Okay? Now, let me show you a step forward. Okay? Something you can do to even understand this concept better, okay, more, and to stretch your muscles further. Now, we don't need any blocks for this, okay? This is something we want to do on the floor. Why? Because the floor limits our range of motion a little more than the blocks or the chairs, because as you can see now, my leg is straight, and this means one thing. My knee is straight, my hamstrings pull more. Okay? So if you're not flexible, people here sit down like this. Immediately, posterior pelvic tilt. Why? Because the adductors and the hamstrings, due to the fact that you're sitting down on the floor on a flat surface, your knee is straight, so the hamstrings pull, and if the hamstrings are tight, they move your hips into posterior pelvic tilt. No way you can fix that. Of course, you want to stretch to fix that, of course. There is a way. But to understand how, if you have full control of your hip motion, of your hip anterior pelvic tilt, you want to do exactly the same we did on the chair or on the box, but on the floor. So you want to start with your hands down, okay? And you want to move into posterior pelvic tilt. That's the easy part. And anterior pelvic tilt. Now, this means that you have a full flexibility here. Because the knee is straight, the hamstrings get lengthened like crazy. And also the adductors here, because your legs are super straight, okay, and wide apart. At first, again, we can do it with our hands on the floor to understand how to roll our hips correctly into anterior pelvic tilt. And this unlocks our hip range of motion. Then we want to do it without our hands. And like this, we have this kind of proprioception, which is this kind of controlling the sense of our body. We understand and we know how to control our body. This is proprioception. We have the proprioception of this area because we can move it thanks to the flexibility, but we also understand how to move it, because some people who do have a flexibility, they do have no idea that there are a lot of flexible people who just stay like this all the time. Why? Because they don't have this kind of proprioception. The sense of their body is moving the correct way. That's the proprioception. Once we have this proprioception and the flexibility, of course, to do it, then we can finish it off again with a weight. We can use the weight behind our back, place something like a yoga block or more under our chest, and repeat the same strategy as before. So we do want to force that anterior pelvic tilt initially. Okay, so that anterior pelvic tilt must be maintained very, very, very strong. Hips back, head forward. We move down. Maintain our feet pointing up and come back up. Okay, so the task here, the goal, is to maintain that anterior pelvic tilt the whole time. So we go down and come back up. This is crazy, fantastic, fantastic anterior pelvic tilt. Back, maintain it and come back up. Every time we go down, we want to maintain it for a couple of seconds before we come back up, okay? So we go down, ooh, stretch here, and come back up. Obviously, when you completely got it, this position here, if you are into flexibility training, is called a pancake stretch. So we go down, and we are into a pancake stretch completely. And this is full hip anterior pelvic tilt control, which, as you can see, if you can maintain your hips into anterior pelvic tilt and control that nice and straight lower back as you have your belly fully touching the floor, this is complete anterior pelvic tilt control. And it's awesome. That just, as I told you, this is not mandatory, it's a bonus. For those of you who want to further understand how to move their hips correctly into anterior pelvic tilt, this is terrific. This is terrific, guys. So this is how I love you to think about anterior pelvic tilt, because this is a question I get asked all the time. All the people ask me, many people ask me, how should I move my hips into anterior pelvic tilt? And as you can see, this is not just like a one simple answer question, because there are many things that we must take into consideration. Our flexibility and our proprioception mainly, okay? And then inside of each topic, flexibility and proprioception, there are many exercises, many laws, many concepts, many principles we can follow, we must observe to understand how to unlock our full hip anterior pelvic tilt, full hip flexibility. And I do hope that in this workshop, I taught you the basics, I taught you the principles, I taught you how to think about this complex topic, and now you have all the tools to work on it. Okay, so now the most important part is that you put in the work. Okay, it's all about putting in the work now. Okay, you know the stretches, you know the proprioception, and you know also the protocols. Okay, if you want to work on this and your hips are stuck, just tight, stiff, whatever, you can't move your hips out of posterior pelvic tilt, and you want to get into anterior pelvic tilt, now you have the protocols and the exercises to follow. How many times per week? That's not a question. How many times per week you can. Okay, so do it every time you train. The proprioception training, so the kind of drills you want to use to understand the proper posture, the more the better, okay? Make it part of your daily life. It's not training, okay? Of course, you want to do it. The more the better. The stretches, 2 to 3 times per week is ideal with the protocols we have been seeing together. Okay, guys? I hope that you enjoyed my workshop today. Remember that if you want to get full access to all of my programs, all of my routines, all of my live workshops like this, where I just talk about things, these are the best quality videos you can get to understand the topic, okay? There is my flexibility guy app, okay, which you can check through my Instagram link in bio, through my YouTube description, whatever, like check my flexibility guy app to get all these live videos plus programs, etc. inside. And if you're already a member, thank you. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for staying with me today. Have a nice stretch and see you in the next video. Bye.
I traveled all the way to Japan in this place of silence and peace to find out the secrets of flexibility training. I'm in this temple right now because here is where I believe it's hidden the secret I'm looking for. It gotta be somewhere around here. What? A book? Nani? Honwa? Secret desu ka? Amazon de kaimasu ka? Oh, so ka. Arigatou gozaimasu. Stretching Modern Flexibility Methods is the complete playbook to master your flexibility, and you can check it out on Amazon right now. Huh? It works! It works!